Yo, 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 what's up, guys? This is Madaz, and of course, I'm sure a lot of you have been wondering, where has he been? Where are the videos? Well, for the most part, the market really hasn't given us much in the way of opportunities, especially for me to look for some good examples to make videos of, and a few times there were examples, I forgot to hit record, not gonna lie. So I really wanted to capture especially that PRGN huge spike from a couple of trading days ago where I nailed a really nice win. But unfortunately, got too excited, got too focused on the actual trade itself, which of course would always take precedence over recording the video, unfortunately. But you got to make the money first. So got too excited, kind of slipped my mind, forgot to hit record, unfortunately. But that would have been a really nice example, as that was pretty much the best washout long play that I've had in recent memory. But nonetheless, today we got a really nice play. Actually, almost forgot to hit record again. Did actually miss recording the first trade, so you won't get to see the big win at the open, unfortunately. But nonetheless, I did manage to get some of the footage from about 9:42 a.m. on. I felt like it was still good. It was a good example to demonstrate heavy tape and what exactly do I mean by when a stock has a heavy tape. And also I do make a trade as well in it, a secondary trade. A lot of times you guys ask me, oh, what is a secondary trade? What do you mean by that? Well, it's when I size down and I kind of show how I implement smaller size and still capture a decent gain and supplement my initial gain without putting the entire gain from the first trade at risk. So if you read my blog, essentially I've been saying size big on the first trade when the volume is at its maximum. As the volume is slowly diminishing as time goes on, you want to size down. So in the event that there's some sort of catastrophic event that causes the trade to really go against you, you don't ruin and blow your entire day from your entire profits from your first trade, which should make up a good amount of your profits on the day because of the volatility and volume usually takes place at the open. So with that in mind, that's pretty much why I do that kind of strategy and that kind of sizing, those kind of rules for my sizing. So that's the point of this video. I also want to illustrate a lot of you guys, of course, today the big question is, how did I know that CCXI, which is the stock in question today, how did I know that it was a short? Okay, so every time a stock comes out, it gaps up. A lot of people are trying to figure out, okay, do I long it? Do I short it? Is it a bullish long bias trade, or should I take a bearish short bias short bias position on the stock? In this case, CCXI definitely was much more heavy toward the short side, and I'm about to show you guys why. And I'm going to compare it with PRGN on the day that it squeezed, and why that day it was very obvious that it was a long bias stock, and why I was able to confidently go in with 25,000 shares the day that I did. And a lot of you guys were wondering, how the heck did he know to go in with so much size and confidently know that he wasn't going to get smoked on it, So I'm going to explain both cases so you guys can pick my brain a little bit and get at least somewhat of an understanding of how I trade, especially in the first 30 minutes or so, which is basically where most of the action and where most of the money is made, at least from my perspective. So CCXI today, let's just say we didn't know the action today so far. So let's just say all you did was you saw this gap up, right? So when I see this kind of action, you wake up in the morning, Pacific time, it's 5 a.m., so it's really in the morning. So I didn't wake up this early. When I woke up, it was already around 5:30 a.m. So 8:30 a.m. Eastern, stock was already kind of fading down toward 4. But it did hit a high of 4.9. And if you think about it, if you look at the daily chart, this is the first thing that I look at. When I look at the gappers, I look at the pre-market action, and I look at the daily chart. Let's backtrack a little bit and look at the daily chart. Okay, and the easiest thing to see, you say you don't know this candle. The easiest thing to see on CCXI is this thing has been a downtrending piece of shit stock since, December, as you can see. And if you want to scroll all the way back, it's pretty much since June, downtrended all the way down to August. Made a little bit of an uptrend here, and then since December, pretty much the end of last year. This thing's been pretty much going down toward oblivion, hitting an all-time low just a few days prior to today's big move. So the first thing that comes to mind when you see this, and a lot of you guys are smart enough to figure this out already, is that this stock has a lot of bag holders. Okay, I mean, look at the way this thing's been tanking. Hasn't been much of a bounce whatsoever since it's dropped from around the 820s, 830s, all the way down to sub 2s, no bounce. So that means that the bag holders, I mean the people that have been longing the stock and averaging down infinitely, have pretty much had no chance to get out. I mean, they had like a little bounce right here, but other than that, this thing dropped from 8 down to sub 4, so losing more than half of its value in the span of about a month with pretty much no bounce, and then going down a little bit more, down to the low 3s, and then down to 2s, and then finally down to below 2, now 192 here, the all-time low. So you better believe that the first thing that comes to mind is that these longs that have been pretty much holding this thing for 5-6 months, they're wishing for any sort of a move, a real bounce, or any sort of gap up, or any sort of miracle for them to finally be able to at least salvage something. Okay, and these guys have been averaging down, who knows, from 8 all the way down. Maybe, I'm sure there's at least one person out there that's been bag holding this from 8s and buying down as low as they can. And if they see something like this, guess what? They're going to sell into it, and that's going to damp any sort of prospects for this thing to squeeze. And that's the first thing you want to think about. Okay, if the stock has been a downtrending piece of shit for as long as this has been going on, you better believe that this thing is going to face a lot of adversity when it comes to any attempts at moving up. So you gotta take the first step is look at the daily chart and look at the bigger picture, which is the longer term trend, which is pretty much this thing has been going down and really pretty much has not seen any sign of life at all for 5 months straight now. Okay, so that's the first thing you want to look at. The second thing you want to look at is the intraday, the pre-market action. This thing has pretty much been making lower highs and lower lows. So you can see that even the longs that were trading on this particular day from a short-term standpoint, these longs aren't too happy either, because they're seeing their stock pretty much going down. If they're averaging down here, they're going to get smoked too. So you better believe that any spike at the open, they're going to want to sell into this and get out. On top of the long-term longs that have been holding this since 8s, they're going to dump at the open too whenever they get a chance to see that this thing is not going to hold up. They're going to sell into it, and these longs that get in today are going to want to get out as well if they see that this thing is not going to show you any sign of life whatsoever. So this means that any type of move at the open is probably going to get stuffed. Very, very high probability, just based on the fact that both the long-term picture on this stock, the bigger picture, is showing that this thing has a lot of bag holders, a lot of people that are probably holding this thing down, 60-70% or more, and pretty much they're just wishing for any type of move so they can get out. Same thing for the people today that got in pre-market. They're going to want to get out too as well, because this chart is not looking favorable to them as well either. So on top of that, you throw in the shorts for good measure, the new shorts that want to bank on the short side of this thing, bank on this thing going down. You got pretty much a bunch of people dumping on this thing at the open, and that's exactly what happened. And if you see right here, the first move, it attempted to break above this little resistance level right here around $4. Didn't make it. It ended up wicking, and there you go. The rest was history. This thing couldn't even bounce, pretty much mimicking the behavior that it typically does on the daily chart. Pretty much straight downtrend, not much of a bounce, and pretty much more downside action. You see right here, same thing, attempted move to the upside as expected due to the factors that I explained. All of the sellers just jumped on this thing and slammed us all the way back down. This thing couldn't bounce. Heavy tape, which I will demonstrate on the footage. Heavy tape, no bounce at all. This thing dropping, 80 cents, couldn't even bounce, 10 cents. So, when you see a stock bouncing, dropping this much and struggling to even regain an eighth of the move, recover an eighth of the move to the downside, back to the upside, you know something's up with this thing. You know they're definitely selling hard into the move. So definitely, once I saw this, it was an obvious short all the way, pretty much up until this 270 support level, which I did tweet multiple times. I said if you guys were holding short on this thing, 270 275-ish, that was what I said, was a great place to at least take some profits. And if you see this thing kind of hold up multiple times, you can kind of scale out if you want. But I was pretty much all out by the time it was around $3, because typically around 10 a.m. afterward the volume kind of drops off too much for my liking. So I took it all off around 10 a.m. Didn't want to deal with the grind and the sideways. But if you guys managed to hold past that and capture an additional 30 cents, great, good for you. That's awesome. But I said 275, pretty much a key support level, and here's why. You look at the level right here. It was prior resistance, and pretty much showed up again, acting as support. So all in all, the stock market, in its simplest form, is basically just a battle of buyers and sellers. I mean, if you want to talk about it in layman terms, that's what it makes a market. Buyers and sellers trying to jockey for position and try to determine the price, the value of a security on the open market. That's really all it is. And all you have to do is picture it the easiest way to picture this is probably the tug of war analogy. You got one side, you got the buyers, and the other side, you got the sellers. So you just got to figure out who's winning. Okay? So if this thing is dropping this much, lower highs and lower lows, you better believe the sellers are going to be happy. Okay? And then if you see a stock on the daily chart, which is downtrending this much, you better believe that the longs are feeling the pain here. And if they're getting any chance to get out and salvage anything, they're going to want to get out, and they're going to stuff the move, and the sellers are going to jump back on, including the longs and the new shorts, and the sellers are going to start winning the tug of war battle once again. Okay, so if you can kind of picture yourself, visualizing trading as a tug of war battle between buyers and sellers and who's winning, then you better believe that it makes trading a lot more simpler, as opposed to seeing a bunch of flashing green and red and a bunch of really cryptic looking numbers and indicators and all that. Just picture it as simply just a tug of war battle between buyers and sellers, and just trying to figure out who's winning and who's feeling the pain. And you see a stock downtrending this hard, no bounce, you better believe that the longs are feeling the pain, and the shorts aren't going to give them any mercy whatsoever. And that's pretty much what happened. This thing ended up dropping from 390s down to 270s. That's a pretty substantial drop before finally getting a bounce when the lull kind of kicked in. This is when I kind of guessed that the shorts probably started covering gradually over time, and the stock pretty much found its equilibrium price around 290s. So that's CCXI and why it was an obvious short. Now let's talk about the opposite scenario, which is PRGN. So PRGN was the stock, as you guys know, if you guys follow me on Twitter, was the stock where I made $13,000 in a span of about 3 minutes on the long side on the washout. So let's go ahead and take a look at that particular day. So this is the day where it ran. So let's just say we didn't know that. Okay, let's just say we only had the benefit of the pre-market action. So the day before, we could see that PRGN kind of grinded up. Lots of halts. Nice move here. Parabolic. 20 cents all the way up to 260. Okay, so typically when you see the move like this, you better believe that a lot of shorts are getting screwed. So in this instance, the shorts are definitely feeling the pain here. Shorts that are averaging up and up and up and up, they're getting screwed here. The float was probably being refreshed, rotated multiple times here, and you can see that the stock is pretty much holding up very, very well. Typically, a parabolic move like this, for the shorts to be happy, it would have to start dropping back down, pretty much all the way back down to where it started. But in this case, it kind of held up toward the top end of the range. So this is not good for the shorts. Any shorts that start holding overnight here, they're going to be very, very nervous. And here's why. Is because despite the fact that this stock did put in a high around 260, it's still pretty much hovering, churning right here, consolidating between 150s and 220s. So you've pretty much got this little, I forgot the name of this formation actually. I don't really follow formations enough, but you got this little consolidation action right here, and this is going to trap some more shorts. I mean, if you look at the volume, some pretty good volume here still toward the end of the day, and the shorts that are pretty much averaging up and up and up, there's still lots of shorts underwater at these price levels. So the next day, if you see a gap up, you better believe that these shorts right here are going to start freaking out. So in this instance, the longs are definitely crushing it in the tug of war battle, and the shorts are definitely feeling the pain. So the next day, if this thing gaps down and starts fading down, then the shorts are happy. Then pretty much this thing will just go back to where it was, and that's that. But if this thing gaps up and holds a higher low and keeps making higher highs, these guys are going to start freaking out, like I said, and that's going to induce a short squeeze. So fast forward to the next day, pre-market. Okay, let's just say we don't know what happened at the open yet. We got a slight gap up and a parabolic pre-market move. This thing breaking above the previous day's high at 267. You can see that it attempted to crack below 267 for one candle. Couldn't do that. Went even higher and made a higher low, 285. And pretty much still holding up. So pretty much every single short the previous day is underwater. So given this, the fact that the stock has rotated its float several times over, and every single short from yesterday is underwater, you better believe this thing is going to probably run. Now you might want to ask, okay, well, PRGN is also another piece of shit stock that's pretty much been downtrending infinitely as well. Well, that is true. This thing has been pretty much tanking for a very long time. Pretty sure there's probably some splits here, but this thing has been downtrending for a very long time, and it went at 20 cents all the way down to 20 cents. Why was this thing not an easy short like CCXI? Well, unlike CCXI, this thing trapped a lot more shorts, and you can see, like I explained earlier, it's just by virtue of the fact that this thing is holding higher lows and a lot of float rotation, and the gap up makes a recipe for the shorts feeling the pain and a recipe for a short squeeze. Okay, the shorts, they're hurting here. Like I said, if this thing were to behave normally without the shorts, with the shorts ending up feeling really good about themselves, this thing would have probably faded all the way back down, but it didn't. It held closer to the top end of the range, gapped up, went past the previous day's high during the pre-market the next day, and boom, look what happened. This thing squeezed at the open, almost going to $4, and this is where I made my trade on Twitter, where I got in around 330 average and sold near the top at 390 before the shorts finally got what they wanted with this slam right here, and then eventually they ran out of shorts to cover, and the sellers finally took over the tape here and won the tug of war battle. So that's pretty much the difference between PRGN and CCXI. They're both set up the same way. They're both piece of shit downtrending stocks that should rightfully be this is pretty much at zero or close to zero. But in one case, we had PRGN pretty much squeeze, rotate the float several times over, higher lows, shorts averaging up, getting caught, averaging up, higher lows. They finally get happy here with what looked like a top, and then consolidation, gap up, parabolic, higher lows, couldn't break back below the previous day's high, parabolic at the open, and then they finally got their slam, but not before this thing went from 20 cents all the way up to close to $4. So that's PRGN, CCXI today. This thing, lower highs, unlike the higher lows, and higher highs on PRGN. Lower highs, lower lows, pretty much mimicking the daily chart, showing that the sellers are in control and winning the tug of war battle. And there you go, pretty much fading the whole day until about 11 o'clock. So that's pretty much how I determine whether this stock is long or short bias. Just figure out who's feeling the most pain. Are the longs feeling the most pain, or are the shorts feeling the most pain? Because basically the stock market and trading is about pretty much, like I said, battle of buyers and sellers. If the longs are feeling the pain, then this thing is probably going to see some more downside action, like in the case of CCXI with the lower highs and lower lows and the really, really heavy tape. Or will it be like PRGN, where the stock keeps making right here higher highs and higher lows, and the shorts are feeling the pain. So that's pretty much how I determine the bias. Really simple when you think about it, but for the most part, it really helps when you kind of consider all the factors. It makes a lot of sense. It's pretty logical. That will help you make a solid judgment in determining whether or not you should be looking to go long or looking to go short. That doesn't mean that you should be closed-minded. I definitely had a long trade, a plan for a long trade on CCXI in the event that it did just wash out at the open. My plan was to get in if it dropped to 320s. If it yanked there really fast, I would have traded for a quick bounce, maybe back to the 360 level for a 40-cent scalp. But the first move was to the upside, I ended up wicking there, so pretty much did what I thought it would do, which was the short trade, and paid out nicely, as you can see. So, all right, so we're gonna go ahead and show the footage. Pretty much like I said, didn't get a chance to record the first trade, unfortunately, but the first trade I did was waited for this thing to reject 4. I wanted this thing to go past 4. Ideally, I wanted 4 10s, and it would have probably done 10,000 shares, but it didn't get there, so I did what I would call chase size. And you guys know I don't condone chasing, but this thing pretty much really looked like it wasn't going to make it over 4. So either way, though, I took the precaution and only did 5,000 shares, and in the event that it did rip past 4s after that, I could add another 5,000 shares and then have a 10,000 shares with an average of around 4 something. So I wouldn't overextend myself. So that's what I usually do. A lot of guys ask me, like, how do you know whether to get in the 390s or wait for the 4s and you might miss the trade. Well, if it doesn't quite get there, you could always just get in smaller, and then if it goes past that, you can add, and then you could pretty much add to your full position what you would have done had this thing just ripped straight to 4 10s from the start. So I got in around 385 or something like that, 5,000 shares, and this thing dropped, covered, I think on this candle right here. So I made about 50 something cents. $2,600 on the first trade. So we're gonna pick up right after that trade. I'm gonna show you guys my secondary trade that I did. Half size, did 2,500 shares. Just to illustrate the point how I manage my risk, so that way I don't blow my profits from the morning. I don't overextend myself, while at the same time it's a really nice way to supplement the gains from the first trade. So I'm gonna go ahead and watch the video. Hopefully you guys find this to be very helpful. Alright, so let's go ahead and double speed this. So the point of this video is to show you guys that the tape was really heavy and that it was an obvious short even at these levels. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what I try to do here. So I'm kind of observing that this thing is kind of really struggling mightily hard to bounce, even though it's already dropped about 70 cents. So I'm gauging here for any sort of pop, maybe back toward VWAP, ideally for a nicer size short. But if it stalls around here, I'm probably going to get in around half size at 2,500 shares, which you guys see me do right here. I got in there at 320, 2,500 shares. So even if this thing rips to 350 or whatever, I could always add another 2,500 shares. With the way the tape is trading, it's very unlikely that this thing is going to go back over 4. So we're going to watch this thing struggle. Pay very close attention to the level 2 and watch how this thing just struggling really hard to bounce at all, even though it's absorbing a lot of shares here. Normally that would be a good sign that this thing might catch a couple of shorts and then take them for a ride for a nice squeeze. But in this case, you can see that it's struggling really hard to even bounce 5 cents even. So that's a pretty obvious sign that this thing is not looking good on the long side. Longs that have probably been buying this thing and averaging down. Once they see that this thing is just breaking all support levels without giving them any chance to get out, they're going to start panicking and they're going to push this lower. So right now, like I said, in 320s, 2,500 shares. If this thing bounces to 340, 360s, whatever, I'll probably add another 2,500 shares, small size. Even at the worst case scenario, I'll only lose probably $500. And I'm already up 2,600 at this point, so that's not too bad. That's how you manage your risk. You don't want to go in like 10,000 shares or something at this point and put your entire gains from your first trade at risk. So now you can see the ask kind of coming down really hard here at 320s. This thing tries to make a move up, and then you see the ask kind of getting heavy. Normally, in most cases, this thing should have bounced. A 70-cent drop should see at least a 20-30 cent bounce maybe, but not in this case. And this is what I mean by the stock's trading really heavy, because that can't even bounce at all despite the magnitude of the drop. As you can see, it's still struggling to even get past 320, and you'll see that every time it looks like it's going to go back up, giving the longs any glimmer of hope, it's going to get slammed right back down immediately. You see the bids here, 318, 12,000 shares. And it's not really pushing much. See, it just gets whacked out. You see that? And exactly as I illustrated. When you see the longs getting any sort of glimmer of hope, any sort of bids pop up, normally that would be a good sign for a long side. But the market didn't react the way it should, and bids just got whacked. Now we see more bids at 307. Normally you would think that I would probably prop the stock maybe 10 cents, a quick 10-cent jump. Now, once again, you see this thing struggling to even move 3 cents off of all those bids. You see the 310s kind of coming down heavy again. Now 307's getting whacked. So this tells me one thing. This tells me that somebody's liquidating very hard. Okay, somebody's probably putting a hidden offer, hiding their size, and probably selling a lot of shares. That's probably why this thing can't go up at all, even though we see some huge 20,000 share bids show up. Now 2 times in a row, we got a big bid earlier that tried to prop this thing earlier, and now we're seeing the same thing. Another attempted bounce, slammed right back down below 310. So there you go. They're just teasing the longs here at this point, bouncing the stock 3, 4, 5 cents, and getting them to average down, maybe jump in because they see a big bid, thinking that they're going to probably bounce this thing, and then yank it right back down and pull the rug right under them. So we're going to see more of the same action. I'm still holding my short position. Again, 2,500 shares, just trying to supplement my gains from the morning. Nothing too big. At this point, I'm feeling really comfortable. Pretty much probably a 320 stop out point. Break even, worst case scenario. And the 307s where the big bids were pretty much gone in just like that. In a quick glimpse. So this thing's still not really showing much life. Anytime it tries to bounce, no good. That means the shorts are winning the tug-of-war battle, the proverbial tug-of-war battle that I've been trying to illustrate throughout this entire video. 310s now basically the new 320s from earlier. Can't get past 310 every time it tries to do that. The ask come right back down, and it doesn't look like there's a lot of size on the ask, but you barely believe that there's some sort of hidden size there holding this thing back down to the point where any big bids that show up can't prop this thing at all, even for a 5-cent bounce. So again, that's what I mean by heavy tape, guys. Just look at this thing. This thing can't bounce at all. It's dropped almost 90 cents at this point. And it's all a byproduct of the way the chart was set up and the bag holder selling into this move. And it was very easy to see, guys, based off of the analysis on the daily chart from the long-term bigger picture, as well as the short-term intraday picture from the pre-market action, you can see that even today, longs that got in today are pretty much feeling the pain as well, whereas the longs from from 5 months ago that have been averaging down this whole time have definitely been feeling the pain, and they're taking this opportunity to alleviate anything and salvage whatever they have left, on this nice little move here. So more heavy tape action. This thing can't regain even 307 is where the big bids were. So at this point, there we got a big ass there, 306. So at this point, I'm pretty much looking for a 3 wash. 10 o'clock usually is my target point to, exit any positions, because that's usually where the volume typically dries out or the stock typically goes sideways. In this case, CCXI did eventually fade to 270s, which was the target that I pointed out. But like I said, I typically don't want to hold through low periods of low volume. Didn't want to take that risk at this point. Was very content with my profits. So I'm going to watch for 10 o'clock, see if this thing drops below 3. And if it washes out to 290, I'll probably take that if it kind of holds 3s. Going to cover at around there and just pretty much call it a morning. We can see the tape's still heavy at this point. Very, very confident with my position. Up about $375 off of the 2,500 shares. Again, stop out at 320. It's very unlikely to get there at this point, unless they let up on the ask, which doesn't look like it's going to happen. Again, heavy tape, more selling. Anytime it looks like the bids are going to prop it up, they slam it right back down. Again, the ask doesn't even look like that. There's that much on the level 2. It looks like there's actually a lot of bids. But, at worst, it looks like there's an even amount of bids and ask, but definitely there is some sort of hidden seller or something going on here on the sell side that's holding this thing and preventing it from even bouncing a couple cents. Very, very, very heavy tape. So here we go, 10 o'clock. I'm probably going to cover pretty soon if 3s confirm as the bottom. And you're actually in for a treat right now, because I usually don't hold stocks for this long. This is pretty much a long-term investment for me. I've been holding this thing for 15 minutes. So usually my trades are about a minute long, maybe even a couple of seconds. So this is a nice little change of pace. See Madaz kind of hold the stock for 15 minutes. But I was very, very confident with this one. This thing pretty much had no sign of getting anywhere near my entry based on this tape. So close to a 3 wash. There we go. Tried to put in my order, 298. I guess didn't get filled. And you're going to see me attempt to get out around here. 10:02, didn't want to hold it past this time. Probably going to see my order coming up pretty soon. There we go. 301s. Going for the rebates on the bid. And it should fill any second now. And almost done. All right, there we go. 2,500 shares. Got the rebates. So 0.002 on ARCA. So it's another $5 on top of the $475. Nice little trade, 15 minutes. So all in all, 30 minutes of action. Just a little bit over 30 minutes of action. $3,100. Can't complain about that. Although this thing did eventually go to 270. Could have made more, but you know what? I stuck to my plan. And you can see right now, it could have kind of held $3 here. I'll let the footage run for a couple more minutes. Yeah, but you'll see that it kind of looked like this thing was kind of going sideways a little bit around 3. Just didn't want to deal with it anymore. But those of you that held to 270, congratulations. Got a pretty sick move here. 390s to 270s. That's a pretty sweet gain. All right, guys. So that's pretty much the video. Hopefully you guys found it to be very educational and informative, and finally get a better understanding about how I trade and what I see in the morning, how I decide whether or not a stock is worth longing the looking for the washout to long, or looking for the pop to short, and how I determine my biases. And if you guys have any more questions, as always, feel free to tweet at me or leave a comment below. So that being said, guys, hopefully it won't be another, 5-6 months before we get another nice play for me to record and post a video about. So hopefully the market keeps on giving. Today was a pretty sweet day. Definitely something that we really needed as we are approaching summer, and I was dreading the fact that we might have started our summer lull. But thankfully, we got a gift today. Congratulations to those of you that took advantage of it. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.